Hello, this is Pastor Don Long, and here we are as we consider the Jewish roots of the Christian faith, talking about what it means to be grafted in to the nation of Israel. We're coming up on the season to celebrate Hanukkah, and if you're sitting there in your home and you have your Bibles, I'd like you to turn to John chapter 10. Those of you in the Bible study tonight, join me there on John chapter 10. We're making this broadcast actually earlier. We're back in Thanksgiving time, but by the time it shows, you're going to be past your turkey and begin to think about the upcoming celebration of Hanukkah. And of all the moeds and feasts that we talk about here at Faith Christian Church, Hanukkah is one that we celebrate, we get excited about, but it's actually not one of the moeds of God. You can go back to Leviticus chapter 23 and read, these are the appointed moeds, the appointed times when Yahweh says we're to celebrate different things. And Hanukkah is not one of them. And people would say, well, Hanukkah really is a celebration of the Jewish community as opposed to a celebration of God, a festival of the Lord. This is a celebration of events that transpired within the Jewish community. Some have likened Hanukkah to July 4th in America. We celebrate it because it represents something in the United States of America. But there's another reason why we celebrate that, and that is when we look at the life of Yeshua. Now, one of the things I believe we've talked about in the past is that when you look at the ministry of Yeshua and track it through the Gospels in terms of where he was when he taught different things. This upcoming trip to Israel, and for those of you watching on TV, we are going to Israel again this June. In 2017, I would urge you to come along with us. It's going to be a great time. All of our tours are study tours, which means we are opening the Scriptures and understanding how those Scriptures apply to what we're actually seeing with our eyes. This upcoming trip, more than any that we've had so far, is going to be a very Bible-oriented tour. You're going to want to have your Bible with you. We're going to talk about places, some of which we've seen before but never understood in the depth that we're going to on this trip. If you want information, by the way, just contact us here at the church. The thing that when you get a Bible map and begin to look at the journeys of Yeshua or the traveling of Yeshua, where he ministered, where he preached, we know he was born in Bethlehem, and we know that's just outside of Jerusalem. And then we know that he moved to Nazareth, and that's up not too far away from the Sea of Galilee. But when he actually began his ministry, he moved to Capernaum. And so his home base for Yeshua and Company Ministries, or Yeshua Ministries, if we could use a contemporary term, would have been in the village of Capernaum. And then he would make trips down to Jerusalem. And because so many of you here in the Bible study tonight have been there, you can imagine that trip, that he would come from the Sea of Galilee and go right down along the Jordan River, and then when he got to Jericho, he would turn west and ascend up to Jerusalem. But one of the things that we note when we look at the gospel account of Yeshua is this, that he didn't go to Jerusalem often. He went to Jerusalem primarily for the pilgrim festivals. Now, you would think today, if you were going to want to have a worldwide ministry, if you were going to teach and preach the things of God and wanted to have your greatest impact, that you might want to pick either the most important city in the nation that you're coming to, or maybe the most important religious city. In both cases, in Israel, that would have been Jerusalem. One would have expected that the journey of the Messiah would have been born in Bethlehem, moved to Jerusalem, and spent his whole life there. And so that he would have been a common fixture on Temple Mount. He would have grown up as a young boy, spending lots of time on Temple Mount, that he would have been in the city of God. Come on, Jerusalem's called the city of God. So if you or I were writing the script of the Son of God coming to humanity, we would certainly put him in that context. we'd want him to have in the center of everything that's going on. We probably would not have thought of writing him into the script up at the Sea of Galilee. The people in Jerusalem looked at the citizens of the Galilee as maybe their country cousins, more like country bumpkins, I guess we would say, because that was their attitude. Can anything good come out of Galilee? Galilee is filled with ignorant, backwoods people who really are not sophisticated like those of us who live in the city. You might have the same kind of thing today between the culture that exists around the greater Boston area versus Western Massachusetts. And people in Western Massachusetts would think of the people in Boston as, you don't even know we exist, you don't even care we exist, why don't we just go do our own thing? And pretty much that reflects a lot of the attitude in the greater Boston area, that when you get inside the belt, you're where the action is, and outside, you're living out somewhat of a less of an exciting life than you do if you're in the metropolis. So from human nature, we would have expected Yeshua to be there. The truth of the Gospels is, it's apparent that he was there for the pilgrim festivals, but as soon as they were over, he left. He didn't particularly like being in Jerusalem. I mean, it was not, I want my name known. I want to have daily arguments, not just with the Pharisees and Sadducees living in these little villages. I want to go right to the seat. I want to go to Jerusalem. And in fact, growing up as a Christian, even going through seminary, my image was that most of the Gospels took place in Jerusalem. And I can remember when I began to dawn on me as we started to put together, where he spent his life, to realize that not only were those first 30 years not in Jerusalem, 30 years living up in Nazareth, but that the bulk of his ministry took place around the Sea of Galilee. And that's just startling in terms of how clear it is. Now, my message tonight is not about, why he's around the Sea of Galilee. I think at some future point that might be something to look at. But I needed to set that up before we come to verse 22 of John 10. You got to get the normal picture of Yeshua. And therefore, you can understand that he would go to Jerusalem for Passover, for Sukkot. He would go to Jerusalem for the pilgrim festivals where God says, for this festival, show up in Jerusalem. But he's already established a pattern that, hey, boys, the festival's over. Let's get on the road. We're headed back. And in fact, when he was in Jerusalem, he actually didn't stay in Jerusalem at nighttime. He went to Bethany. Bethany was his favorite place to go to. Mary and Martha lived in Bethany. And so, while he's in Jerusalem during the day for whatever celebration's going on, I'm out of here. I'm off to the suburbs for the night. So it's in that context and in the light that Hanukkah is not a pilgrim festival that we come to verse 22 in chapter 10 of John. Then came the festival of dedication at Jerusalem. It was winter, and Yeshua was in the temple courts walking in Solomon's colonnade. Now, see, without understanding the background, you just read that and move on. We just locate him and he's there. But suddenly, when you put it in the context of his life, what on earth is he doing down there in Jerusalem for a time? And John identifies it as the festival of dedication. So in John's mind, it's not just, it's wintertime and Yeshua decided he wanted to take a winter vacation in Jerusalem. Now come on, some winters in Jerusalem it snows. Again, you're going to walk. We've driven by air-conditioned bus from the Galilee to Jerusalem, and it's a long day to go along there. But can you imagine walking along the Jordan River in the wintertime? Why would you go to Jerusalem in the wintertime anyway, unless God said it's an appointed festival, which God didn't say? So, and you've already said you don't like Jerusalem. What on earth, Yeshua, are you doing in Jerusalem in the winter? And John tells us why. He's there because it's the festival of dedication. Now, what's interesting is that the pilgrim festivals, by and large, are celebrated in Jerusalem, but Hanukkah can be celebrated anywhere. Again, because it's not a divine moed, And to my knowledge, the rabbis at that time, and for any time as far as I know, have never said Hanukkah must be celebrated in Jerusalem. So not only is it not a divine appointment of God, but he could have done, it should have said, then came the festival of dedication at Capernaum. And Yeshua gathered, all his disciples around, and they had latkes, or whatever else they might want to have. It's Hanukkah in Tiberias. So are you beginning to think that there might be something peculiar about this? And I think the answer is this, that Yeshua specifically wanted to put his personal stamp of approval on the celebration of the festival of dedication. I can think of no other reason for it. I'm sure if he had said to his disciples the first Hanukkah that came along, said, "Hey boys, coming up on Hanukkah," he said, how about if we all go down to Jerusalem? I'm sure they looked at one another and said, why Jerusalem? It's wintertime. You don't even like it there anyway. We're going to get down there. You're just going to go out to Bethany and stay in the village and, chilly nights and everything like. Why are we going there? It's the Torah does not say to do that. Why are we doing that? And I think the meaning of it is twofold. I think there's 2 points that Yeshua is making that I can gather only by looking at all the Gospels and the things he taught. And those 2 things are this. Number 1 is that Hanukkah is called the Festival of Lights. It's about the lighting of the candle. It's about light coming out in the midst of darkness. And one doesn't have to read very far in the Gospels to understand that Yeshua made a specific connection of himself with the light. Come on, you know the verse. I am the light of the world. You can't get any more direct than that. In fact, there's some who think that must have been a statement that he made at Hanukkah and it got transferred or moved around in the Gospels to other locations. But it certainly would have been a Hanukkah message that he would have given. I am the light of the world. So the first significant thing that I find about Yeshua, just by looking at this one verse that it came to the festival of dedication at Jerusalem, it's winter and he's there, is that Yeshua was making a clear stamp that if you want understanding about yourself, about the purpose of your creation, the purpose of your destiny, if you want to understand what mankind's all about, you want to understand what God is all about, if you want to have answers, then you and I can only get the answers if we come to the light, and he is the light to every issue in life. He's the light, period, end of story. He is not a answer, he's the answer. Now, when he expressed it in another way, he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me, or except by me. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time teaching on that piece of it tonight, but the egocentricness of Yeshua's statement is astounding when you look at it at face value and quit reading it like religious people. I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to God except through me. Buddha won't do it. Muhammad won't do it. Allah won't do it. I'm not going to Allah. I'm going to Yahweh. And there's only one way to get to Yahweh. There's not many paths. There's not many paths that go to heaven. There's one path. There might be different choices of denominations to get you to the path, but the path is single. It's a single-minded, narrow path. In fact, he didn't even decide to try to hide that. He said, the way to life is very narrow, and the way that leads to destruction is very broad. So the way of life that is broad-minded and says everybody can do whatever you think, everybody has a right to their own opinions, everybody, we all have our many ways to get to God. Well, there are many ways, but the many way is to destruction. So I'm not saying you have to believe that. I'm saying if you believe in Yeshua, you have to believe that. Because what we have on the stage of humanity is one central figure, and I would submit to you he's far more central than Muhammad or Buddha or anyone else, because even our calendar is marked by when he was born, A.D. and B.C. That all of Western civilization, who may turn their back on him, can't get away from the fact that who they are and how they got created all comes out of the roots of who he was. But let's look at this man called Yeshua. I mean, quite apart from whether you believe he's the Son of the living God, quite apart from whether you believe he's Emmanuel, God with us, quite apart from whether you believe in the virgin birth. You see, you don't need to believe in the virgin birth, and you don't need to believe in the deity of Christ. You got to come to terms with what this human being walking on this planet said. Because he was fully human. Now he was fully human, fully God, we believe, and we believe that because of what he taught. But at a minimum, all of humanity should be able to agree he was fully human. I mean, there's some people who think in early theology who believe that, well, he wasn't really human. He appeared to be, but he was really an angel in disguise or a spiritual being. But the Bible's very clear he was a man. His contemporaries were very clear that he was a man. And the Romans who drove nails through his hands and watched him die on that cross know he was very much of a man. And those who buried him in the grave and wrapped that body in that wrapping to put him in that grave were very convinced he was man. Nobody thought he was a ghost or a spirit. So if we look on the stage of humanity, we have one Jewish man appearing in humanity who made some rather startling and bold claims. And they're so startling that if they're not true, then the man is the world's greatest con artist. He was either consciously aware that he was a con artist, and therefore he's a liar and a charlatan, or he thought he really was who he said he was. He wasn't, of course, because nobody could be that, but he really thought he was, in which case he was insane. So whether he was a charlatan or insane, I submit to you, either of those cases, then whatever he had to teach isn't worth much. Now, I say that in the light of clearly understanding that in humankind, in humanity, just because you're insane doesn't mean people don't think you're worth much. Look at Picasso. Come on, some of his multi-million-dollar paintings that have sold, he painted when he was in an insane asylum. I don't think he was insane. I think the people that pay the money for that are insane. You know, it's like an insane man painted these pictures, and I'm going to pay millions of dollars to have it. Okay? But he was in an insane asylum, and at one point, some of his contemporaries thought that. They said, you have a demon. But we've got to make a decision about it. And I think we're living in a day and age in America where we who call ourselves Christians have got to start pushing the world to make a decision. And the decision's got to be, if he's not who he said he was, then he's a charlatan and a fraud. And I can respect you more if you say, I don't believe him because he's a liar, he's a charlatan, he's a fraud. You and I are having a more honest discussion than if you say you believe he's a good man, but you don't believe he's who he said he is. Then you're a crazy person. How are you going to get around that? And people are living in this untenable position because nobody will push them on it. We're so afraid they're going to say something negative about Yeshua. Well, they already are if they say he's not who he said he is. The minute you say to me, I believe there's many ways to God, I don't believe Yeshua is the only way, you've called him a liar. And we need to say that to people. Well, I believe there's many ways to get to God. And we need to be able to bold enough to say, well, that's okay for you to believe that, but just be aware you just called Jesus of Nazareth a liar. I mean, that's okay as long as you know what you're doing. Are you comfortable calling him a liar? Because, see, most people aren't. They're going to, well, no, I don't mean to call him a liar. Well, you are, because he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and I am the light of the world. But you're saying he's not, so therefore he lied. I mean, see, I think we would rattle people's cage enough where they got to then make a decision. Who is he? Which is one of our banners we're going to have hanging out along the street before too long. Who do you say I am? Who do you say I am? But see, we're the ones that should be asking that question of the world. Who do you say he is? Well, I don't want to confront. Well, you better confront, because the wrong answer to that leads you to the path of destruction, not to the path of life. The wrong answer to that leaves you, the man in charge of your life, which is going to be utter separation from God throughout all eternity. And the right answer to that then points you to the way by which you can be the way, the truth, and the life, knowing how to get to the Father. Does this make some sense to you? This is not an incidental question. And, you know, as we come up to the, I almost said the pagan celebration, as we come up to the celebration called Christmas, and all the world wants to get around, and by the way, they don't like really talking about Jesus. Well, that's not true at all. They do want to talk about Jesus. And the world doesn't really buy into political correctness at the holiday season. Oh, the stores might say we can't sing Christmas carols about Jesus, we can sing jingle bells, but we can't sing Away in a Manger. And public schools might say, well, we can't sing this, but we can sing that. But the vast majority of Americans know it's Jesus' birthday, and they want to talk about Jesus. They're more comfortable in this season talking about Jesus. But what a terrible place we've left them. We left them in a place where they're very comfortable talking about a baby in a manger rather than a Savior on a cross. We left them in a place where they're very comfortable with warm, oosey-goosey feelings about the little baby Jesus, and wasn't that nice? And I don't know in their little secular homes what they do when these carols come on and what they teach their little secular children about who Jesus was, but he's nice, and the Christians believe he was a nice man. He was like a Gandhi. Now, they don't say he's like a Gandhi, but that's what they're describing it. A man who taught some good things. Be kind to others, do good. Gentle Jesus, meek and mild, who walked around like a Catholic priest with his hands folded together. Come on. That's the image that goes on around the world, until all of a sudden a Christian pops up and says, who do you say he is? Well, you know, I think he was a good man and everything like this. Well, what about getting to God? How do you think one gets right with God or gets to God, if you even believe in God? By the way, most people are going to say they do. Well, they're going to say, I believe there's many ways to get to God. That's what they're going to say. That is the mantra of our culture. There are many ways to God. You can be a Muslim, you can be a Buddhist, there's many ways to God. Well, you can believe that, but again, my point, we need to start saying, then by that you mean that you believe that Jesus of Nazareth was a liar. Well, Pastor, that's bold. You need to get bold. We're talking about people's eternal destiny, and we have a short time, and you and I are called to be watchmen. But look how simple it is. I don't have to have the 4 points of salvation. I don't have to know my Bible backwards and forwards. The question is, who do you say that Yeshua is? And if you think he's a good man, but you don't believe these things, I want to change you to think he's not a good man. See, I'd rather you leave my conversation having said, well, I guess then he's a fraud. And then go home and let that meditate in you for a while, than to let you walk away from my conversation still believing there's many avenues to God, and Jesus is one of them, because I didn't tell you that Jesus, Yeshua, said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and I am the light of the world. But doesn't it kind of make it simple? We're not getting very theological. You don't need to know about predestination. You don't need to know all the avenues about being born again and what all that means. You don't need to have a discussion of the Trinity. We're talking about a human being who walked on this planet, who made some incredible statements if they're not true, very credible statements if they are true. And if they are true, then he is the way, the truth, and the life. Then there are not many ways to get to God. And if there are many ways, then I guess we can write Jesus off and go, get into transcendental meditation or meditate somewhere on a pinpoint and see what happens to us and kind of meditate our way through life. Now, I don't mean by that to be facetious with people. I just mean that this is a celebration where we have a nation whose destiny is up for grabs right now and may very well be destroyed because the people of God haven't settled one issue that we're going to get to next week about the second reason that Yeshua celebrated Hanukkah, or the Festival of Dedication, because it's a festival about assimilation. Assimilation destroys a nation, and it destroys its religion, and it destroys the very essence of what made America great. Because America was founded by men and women who believed not only that Jesus was a good man, but Jesus meant what he said he meant. That's why they founded this country, and that's why we have a covenant. And so we come to this celebration in John 10:22, and we say, wow, Yeshua left the Galilee. He walked, it doesn't tell us, it had to be at a minimum a 2-day journey, probably more often a 3-day journey. And he walked down there, probably 3 days in the winter. Well, it depends how you look at it. Maybe it's cold enough you walk faster so you cover more ground. But you got a 2 or 3 day journey. You're walking to a place that you really don't want to spend a lot of time. It's not your favorite vacation spot. You'd much rather be up on the Sea of Galilee. But you're deliberately, therefore, making a choice to walk down to Jerusalem at this festival, which is not a God-ordained festival, but it has a God-ordained message in it because it's called the Festival of Lights. It's talking about light that is unending, light that has a supernatural miracle to it. It's talking about light coming out of darkness. It's darkness becoming light. It's not light becoming dark, which is a message totally contrary to your experience and mine, because we live in a world where things go from light to dark. We start our day in the morning, it ends at night. We start our lives young and we end old. You kind of wind down, so the theory is, you wind down in light. Light, we go from light to dark. Our culture is going from light to dark, but God starts with dark and says, I bring light out of it. So I start with the evening and the morning of the first day. I start with darkness and draw light out, and Yeshua stands there and says, I'm the light of your world. I have the ability to light up, give understanding to every aspect of your life if you'll only follow me. And so next week we're going to tune in and find out about the rest of it. This is Pastor Don Long. I am sure glad you joined us tonight. I look forward to having you join us next week in Yeshua's name.